Hi, everybody. I'm Adriana Hopkins with ABC 7 News, coming to you from Prince George's County for PGC MLS this week. And this week is just a tad bit different. This week, we are focusing on inspiring and enhancing your fun and creative side. Rise up to the challenge at this exciting quiz game on the topic of Black excellence and achievement on Monday at 7 p.m. Will you come out on top? This is guaranteed fun to experience with friends and family. Join us for a diversity dialogue on Tuesday at 7 p.m. featuring Ta-Nehisi Coates' book, Between the World and Me. The Elephant We Don't See is hosted by Michelle Hamiel, PGC MLS Chief Operating Officer for Public Services, and Kyla Hanington of the Prince George's County Human Relations Commission. The goal of this monthly series is to discuss diversity in the workplace using important recent books as a catalyst for that discussion. On Wednesday at 7 p.m., PGC MLS is hosting a Black History Month open mic event with a theme of For the Culture, Black Voices in the Arts. Also, on Wednesday at 7 p.m., University of Maryland professor and author William Robin discusses his new book, Industry, Bang on a Can and New Music in the Marketplace. Learn about how a scrappy festival in downtown New York City grew into a multifaceted organization with a major record deal, a virtuosic in-house ensemble, a seat at the table in the Lincoln Center, and in the process change the landscape of avant-garde music in the U.S. Discover locally based businesses and the Black women behind them. Hear these inspiring entrepreneurs candidly share their own personal journeys during the virtual event Community Spotlight, Black Women in Business. That's this Thursday at 8 p.m. Lynda.com has a new name, but don't worry, you still have access to all of their incredible courses through your library, now called LinkedIn Learning. They have even more to offer. Enjoy more courses in more languages. Visit pgcmls.info/creative-suite and invest in a better you today. That's just a small peek of all the things happening at your local library. To find out more, head to pgcmls.info and see what's happening at your local library. That's it for PGC MLS this week. Have a great week. See you next week.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us tonight for our series, The Elephant We Don't See, a Diversity Dialogue. I'm Steve Fitzgerald, Director of Dynamic Content and Engagement, and we're back with our first session of 2021, and we've got a good one for you tonight. First, I'd like to introduce our hosts, who will then introduce our book, which is Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates, and they're going to get the discussion going. So we've got Miss Kyla Hanington. She is the Outreach Coordinator for the Prince George's County Human Relations Commission. And as always, we've got Michelle Hamiel, the COO for Public Services at the Prince George's County Memorial Library System. Take it away.
All right, thank you, Steve. Hi, Michelle.
Hey.
And hi, everybody out there. I want to just do a really quick catch up. First of all, we have not been with you since October, so it's been a minute. And this year for calendar year 2021, we're sort of looking at books in a broader framework. We have a lot of different artistic books. We've got memoirs, we've got fiction, I think we've got some essay collections, and we're really broadening how we're looking at books to spark this diversity dialogue. And so I'm super excited. And so for tonight, we are starting with this. And Michelle, I'm wondering, did you want to start and talk about how the book landed for you?
You know, I'd read this book before, Kyla, so and had not thought about it since you suggested we read it. And I saw things in it this time that I had not seen the last time. I absolutely love this book. I love this book. The author is very insightful. He is inspiring. There are moments when you are, as a mother of African-American men, you find you understand the fear that he talks about. You know, and what resonated with me is how he talked about his body. That's something I had not noticed before. But really what struck me is the number of writers he talked about. Fiction and nonfiction, poets. You know, this man just absorbed everything he read. And many of those, the writers that he spoke about, I have gone on to borrow some of the material. But I looked up one, Frantz Fanon, and I don't know that I pronounced that correctly. And I took this quote because it really resonated with what he had written in the book. It says, sometimes people hold a core belief that is very strong. When they are presented with evidence that works against that belief, a new evidence cannot be accepted. It would create a feeling that is extremely uncomfortable, called cognitive dissonance. And because it is so important to protect the core belief, they will rationalize, ignore, and even deny anything that doesn't fit in with their core belief. And that made me think about, navigating this world and how certain people, certain individuals don't fit in to someone else's mental model, and how we so easily put them aside. And as Ta-Nehisi Coates would say, attack their body, and or come after their body. And I took it as they come after their very being. And it is hard to get people to see another way or to accept something different. And how, because I think everybody's been a victim of that. You've talked about you being a Canadian. Certainly African Americans navigate this world that way all the time. If you are gay, lesbian, bisexual, you navigate with someone attacking a lot. And and people can't change your mind necessarily. And how do we work so that it doesn't affect our psyche, doesn't affect the core of our being? And that is challenging. And here's this young man coming up in a society that would throw him away, and having to navigate being on what I'm going to call the mean streets of Baltimore City, and then being in Prince George's County, because yes, he talks about Prince George's County.
He talks about Prince George's County.
Yes, and I will tell you that my son was the victim of some of the police in Prince George's County when he was a scholars student at the University of Maryland, College Park. So, no one escapes what this young man is talking about, whether you are from the projects in a city, or whether you are upper echelon. If you are a person of color, somebody may be coming for your body, as he talks about.
I was just thinking, Casey Lehman, the great Mississippi writer, talks about Prince George's County. I think it resonates across all areas. You don't have to live in Prince George's County, but I will say the impact when you look at these writers who are sharing the same story about Prince George, what they experienced in Prince George's County, is really, it makes your blood run cold. It's very present. I was thinking also when you talked about his being, he has a part in here, and actually, I just need to show all of our regular viewers, not to get too distracted, but I'm trying to not turn down pages. I'm trying to do a better job. So I have all of these many, many, many notes. And of course, because I have so many, I'm worried that I'm not going to find the quote. But he talks about this part about his body, that his body is himself. So he is the bones and the tendons, and that is the his being is the body. And so to violate the body, for the body to be not safe, and to be constantly protective of one's own body, but then also to have your body be constantly at risk and having to alter your presence, like the toll that takes on, as you said, one's psyche.
And he talks about having to navigate the streets of Baltimore as a young man. You have to know how to, and he was raised by a good family, taking care of him and, well, telling him how to behave. And he was respectful, but when he was on the street, he had to adapt. Because he wasn't in a neighborhood that was considered safe, and he had to see, how did somebody approach you? If somebody walked up to you and said, "What's up?" How did they say it? What was their body language? Where were their hands? Were they in their pocket? What's going on? And understanding that, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, he talks about being next to someone who got shot, and just being able to come out on the other side and feel like everything that I've experienced, I can still raise my son, because that's what I like. This book is for his son, because one of the things that he does is he talks to his son about his experience as a child, and that's important. Our history, the life that we live, that's important for our children to know. And that is one of the things that my parents always shared. They always shared what it was like growing up in the 30s and everything they experienced. And so the fact that he is going through his entire life, and from a child through college and raising a child, I love this book. I can't say enough. I can't.
No, it is. So in summary, Michelle and I would like to suggest that you read it. I really had that feeling. We had in October, the last book that we read for our diversity dialogue of 2020 was Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? And as we talked about that, one of the things that I kept saying, I probably said it 10 times, was I wish we had started with this book. It was such a foundational work. I had this as I was reading this, that this that I just feel is a foundational sort of scene setting, tone setting, experience setting. We looked at books that talked about, and I said that we were looking this year on maybe some slightly different books in terms of like looking at art and art expression. And one of the things that does is the books we read last year, I thought was so wonderful for doing diversity dialogue. How do we engage with people who aren't like ourselves? And giving us tools and skills to look at and watch for. And that looking at a book like this, where you get that sense of experience that someone gives you, that you get the compassion and the growth and the understanding, where you maybe, I'm not going to know ever what it is like to be a Black man in Baltimore, to be a Black man, like that. I will never know that. But by reading a book like this, to start to be able to touch some of those experiences. And I think that is one of the incredible gifts for this, is that to give you that, to bring you into the world. You mentioned the thing about parenting, and I came across an article because I was very interested in different things he'd done. And the article that he wrote in 2002 about being a new parent. And I'm hoping that we can get it in the chat. I think Steve, who's our backstage friend today, can get it in the chat for anybody who's interested, because I also found that it was so interesting to read this 2002 article about his role as a father, and a new father, and how he felt, how he experienced that, and how he felt that he was experienced by others. And then coming, 13 years later, because this came out in 2015, with this extraordinary gift to his child, and really to us, I think. And it was just, so hopefully people will get a chance to look at it.
So here's a lead in. Me, I try to get everybody involved in what I'm reading. When I'm reading stuff like this, I let my whole family know, and we discuss it. And so my daughter just recently had a baby. And so I asked her boyfriend, and when I say just recently had a baby, my grandbaby isn't even a month old yet.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I asked my future son-in-law, what will you tell Jaden when he grows up about how to navigate this world? And this is what he wrote. So if I get emotional, guys, I'm sorry. He wrote, "For starters, I thought the life I lived was normal, bouncing from house to house, being with different families every day. I didn't have friends growing up, and I was very quiet, so I didn't know anything different. It wasn't until I met people with parents in their life that changed the way I saw things. Even still, to be honest, I'm still learning. There's new challenges for Black men, Black fathers. Every day growing up the way I did, I learned the importance of a father figure. Are small things that I don't know or had to learn on my own that most men learn from their fathers, like tying a tie or playing a sport. I taught myself by watching other kids play or YouTubing it. I don't want that for Jaden. I want my son to know that I am here for any and everything. If he doesn't have anything, he has a family and a solid foundation that will always be there for him and protect him. He will know he can come to me for anything and not be judged. He will feel safe. I will teach my son to be respectful, but not to be walked over. Be confident, but not arrogant. Follow his dreams and be the best he can be. There will also be people who will hate on him, temptation and setbacks. But Jaden will know not to feed into them. He will know who and whose he is. And as long as he knows that, he will be successful in this world. I would remind him of all the things I taught him about haters and temptation, and to remain confident that he is just as great as the next man. I'll teach him that as a Black man, he will always be judged and looked at as inferior. But as long as he doesn't feed into it and continue on his journey confidently, then he is okay. The plan is already written for him, so those comments and judgments are just bumps in the road. He just can't give in to them. I'd also let him know that it will get frustrating, but the people who judge him or tell him he's less than because of his skin color are intimidated by him. And it is okay to take it as a compliment and use it as fire to move forward. So now his son isn't quite a month. My son wrote, because I just asked him the question, not, it was just, tell me what you would say. So he said, I'll tell him that his number one goal needs to be to make it home when it comes to the police. Don't argue, don't resist, but do what it takes to make it home and let us fight for you if you weren't in the wrong. In general, I'll just teach him to take pride in being Black and support Black people. I think we are seeing a surge in support of Black businesses right now, and I'd like to see them continue that support. I also plan to expose him and teach him how to navigate in diverse settings, attending a PWI and HBCUs and working in both government and the Black church. I see the value in being able to navigate a multitude of social settings. So I would want to teach him to do the same. I know we traditionally have always told our sons and daughters they have to be 10 times better and work 10 times harder. I don't necessarily like that message because it allows people, specifically white males, to set the bar for how hard you work. My message and what I plan to model, just giving everything the best you got. If I tell you that you need to be 10 times better than white folks, but you have the potential to be 20 times better, I don't want you to sell yourself short because somebody else set the bar. Give it everything you've got and success will come. I'll also teach both of them, because my son has a daughter too, the value of loving yourself and being confident in who you are, reinforcing their gifts and talents to remind them that they don't need to seek validation from anyone. For my daughter, I will give her pretty much the same messages as I gave Chase. Get home when it comes to the police. Don't limit yourself to one social setting. Do your absolute best. Don't lose yourself seeking validation from somebody else. So in other words, don't lose your body.
Those are, wonderful.
I know. I'm surprised I got through it without crying.
So thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing, and thank them for sharing. I know that they're not here, but I appreciate that gift that they're sharing to us.
Yeah, I do too. Because they knew it was going to talk about it, so they didn't have to do it.
I know that there's a part in the book, and I'm trying to look at this, where, this is one of those things where I have too many quotes that I'd like to share, but where he talks about the idea of being and he uses 2 times better rather than 10 times better, but he is saying, essentially the same thing, which is don't let those people set the bar. That's not how you measure success.
That's right.
And I thought that was so powerful, and it made me think of, I did my undergraduate degree in Canada, and I did a minor in First Nation studies. And so one of the things that we talked about there is epistemic systems. So to just basically different ways of being in the world. And having this really sort of powerful experience when I'm doing this, which is like, what if you don't like the epistemic system that you're born into and that you're part of? Like, what if that is just, what if, it was almost like, the cognitive dissonance that you different way. I mean, not in the way that the quote had, but that same experience of like, I'm in the wrong epistemic system and I hate the one that I'm born into. And what do you do now? Because you're in this culture, in this system. And one of the things that I thought this book was so beautiful about was calling and giving the gift of saying, you don't have to play in that world. Yeah. Like those people don't set the rules. And he uses the expression of these people who are buying this dream, a certain dream. And, he uses the term, he doesn't ever say white people. He says people who need to identify themselves as white, or people for whom it was important to be seen as white. There's this idea that those people that he's referring to, and, this group as buying into or wanting to believe in this fictitious dream, and that they will do anything. And I think going back to your quote, the cognitive dissonance that is needed to keep a lie going in the face of a lot of evidence. And, he talks in here, I was saying that, that you're never a villain in your own story. And he talks about this here too, that the people who did and still do all of these terrible things and these acts of violence and holding other people down, so manipulated their own thinking and experience, that they're doing it because they're good people. This is what they do. And so I think his call just being like, you don't need to be part of that system. You don't need to. Those are not the measure. Yeah.
He says, and this is right in the beginning. So I did something differently this time. I borrowed the electronic version of the book, and it is hard for me to find my notes. So I'm looking down and then scrolling through the books because I highlighted the book. But he does say, I did find this that I highlighted. Where is it? Okay. The elevation of the belief in being white was not achieved through wine tastings and ice cream socials, but rather through the pillaging of life, liberty, labor, and land, through the flaying of backs, the chaining of limbs, the strangling of dissidents, the destruction of families, the rape of mothers, the sale of children, and various other acts meant first and foremost to deny you and me the right to secure and govern our own bodies. And that was actually part of his definition of, and I would say very long, he doesn't say this is a definition, but what racism looks like. And essentially, it is preventing us the right to secure and govern our own bodies. He is, like I said, I just loved him. And then what was upsetting to me is thinking about when the book was written and some of the people that were unjustly killed. He talks about in this book, like Tamir Rice and Eric Garner. And so, and here we are still same issues. It's like it never gets better.
Right. So many more names.
Yeah. And my note was nothing new here. Check out when this was written. So, yeah.
He talks about the murder of Prince Jones at the hand of a Prince George's County police officer. He has this way of capturing the loss and his way of, he talks about Prince Jones, but he also talks about all the things that made Prince Jones himself.
Mm-hmm.
He has this part where he says, think of all of the embraces, all the private jokes, customs, greetings, names, dreams, all the shared knowledge and the capacity of a Black family injected into that vessel of flesh and bone. And think of how that vessel was taken, shattered, concrete, and all its holy contents, all that had gone into him, sent flowing back to the earth. And I think he had, he talked, there was part about like the homework and the music lessons, like just all of these ingredients of love that, ways in which love is manifested and given. And that, and I think bringing home, not bringing, I mean, that's not the right expression, because I don't think it's not that they weren't home, but elevating this on the page, this person and all of the the line of family and community and love for the person taken by the police.
Yeah, that kind of, when he talks about, it says here, in accepting both the chaos of history and the fact of my total end, I was freed to truly consider how I wish to live. Specifically, how do I live free in this Black body?
Right.
And, he found how to do that. And I think he had to constantly work at that, and how tiring that is. But every time he said something like that, it gave me hope that there's a reason to constantly strive to be free in the skin you're in. Even when it seems like you should give up, even when it seems like there is no hope. To read this book, I'm telling you, it really gave me hope. And this is not a new writing. This is, I can't remember what year it came out.
It's 2015. It's almost 6 years old.
And it is still full of hope. And I can only imagine and there's a picture of him and his son in the book. And, when did you start thinking about what to tell your son? I mean, clearly, because it did not take my daughter's boyfriend or my son long. When I like I said, today, in between my meetings, I asked them the question, what will you tell your son? And both of them within minutes, maybe 30 minutes, within 30 minutes, they had an answer. And, I think about how my husband, how he raised my son and my daughter, and he will tell you, because now we're old school. So he did tell my son, you're going to have to be 10 times better. He did tell my son about driving while Black. He did tell my son how to behave if you do get stopped by the police. And it was the same message. Let me do the fighting for you, but you better not be wrong. And to strive to be the best, and still let them explore and to learn. And like I said, my son, went on to College Park, and then he went on to get his master's at Bowie, got another master's in another school. But as Ta-Nehisi Coates called college, he went to Howard University, and he called it his Mecca. And there he was exposed to so much. And he talks about how he spent his free time in the library, trying to devour everything that was there. So, and this is a complete segue, but, the library provides a safe haven for so many people.
Yeah.
And we don't even realize what people are trying to escape, how people are trying to remain free when they come in our buildings. And, I think of I always say that we are a bastion of democracy, and we let everyone in our doors. Are we really treating them equally? Maybe not. Not everyone gets treated equally, and we're working on that in our system. But we never know what people are trying to escape. We never know how people are trying to protect their Black bodies or anybody. And we never know what we may be doing to damage them or to make them feel like they're not free. And the world is at their fingertips in a library, and that is, and he never really says it in the book, but the way he just talks about all of the authors that he read, and was exposed to, and who he saw on campus, um, clearly that was his spot of freedom, that sweet spot in life. And I'm trying to find some quotes. Now, I grew up in Baltimore City, so the other part of this that made the book fun for me is when he talked about certain things that happened on certain corners or in certain blocks. I knew exactly where he was, so that was also fun for me in reading that. Not that there were great things happening on all of those corners, but the fact that I could place them there, and I mean, you really, I think in this book you got to know him.
It was very personal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to just say something. So I do not work for Prince George's County Memorial Library System, but I do want to take a moment and talk about libraries for what you're saying. And I think you see this in this book with the library, the many books that he was exposed to, and thinkers and writers, and what you're getting at, which is it is a warm place or a cool place. There is a bathroom. You're not at risk of violence. It is a shelter. It is a port in a storm, and it is such a safe place. And so whether you're a child and there's a magical world out there for you, or an escape from troubles in your family or on the playground, I mean, all the way through all of life, I think that I really want to thank and appreciate the space, the physical space that our libraries. And I do think that the Prince George's County Memorial Library System, thank you, has done incredible virtual programming in terms of providing information and space for people here. But there's something about the physical building of that is a truly safe space for people.
Yeah.
So
and I
grateful.
thank Nick for being able to, because when we went to pre-COVID, we weren't doing any virtual programs, and I thought, oh, they're gonna forget about the library. And Nick, he's the chief operating officer for, I always forget his title, the chief operating officer for he's outreach and programming.
Outreach and communication.
Thank you. Somebody from outside the system has to tell me. Okay. I always have it messed up. But but Nick wanted to make sure that the residents of Prince George's County made sure, he was making sure that we didn't skip a beat, that we were still there for the communities that we serve. And he did an amazing job, and an amazing job to the staff who stepped up and decided to do some programming as well. And so we still had story times, and we had exciting programs. We had Kendi and just amazing programs along the way. And I am glad to be part of freeing people. And that's really how I'm looking at it. After reading this young man's book, I'm glad to be part of freeing people.
It is. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it looks like something's going wrong with my computer and my internet. So I'm okay right now, but preemptively, it's been great.
Don't you leave me, Kyla.
So it was like very scary on my end for a second. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. It did kind of throw me off a little bit.
Well, I'm looking for my quotes. So I will never do the electronic version. I will write in my books and turn corners down. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think for me, I love having it in my hand. I really do. There's so for those of you who have the book, on page 55, he has if I can just read, if I can just read for a moment, I think that it's, well, I'd like to read it. So I took a survey of Europe post 1800. I saw Black people rendered through white eyes, unlike any I'd seen before. The Black people looked regal and human. I remember the soft face of Alessandro de' Medici, the royal bearing of Bosch's Black Magi. These images, cast in the 16th and 17th centuries, were contrasted with those created after enslavement, the Sambo characters I had always known. What was the difference? In my survey course of America, I'd seen portraits of the Irish drawn in the same ravenous, lustful, and simian way. Perhaps there had been other bodies, mocked, terrorized, and insecure. Perhaps the Irish, too, had once lost their bodies. Perhaps being named Black had nothing to do with any of this. Perhaps being named Black was just someone's name for being at the bottom, a human turned to object, object turned to pariah.
Mm.
And for me, reading that and thinking about, and again, I've already said the part about him talking about, he opens the book with saying that the white, people needing to call themselves white, that was an important, the people who decided that white was a thing, they were the people who decided that it was important.
Mm-hmm.
And also define what white was, which I think a lot of his message is, you don't have to play, you do not have to participate in this system. And I think about this, the creation myth, which you have, and he attacks this whole book really as an attack on the creation myth of America as well. This, how can you be, this idea of leadership or things that maybe white America is proud of. And as you've already said, Michelle, that quote about just being built on torture.
Mm-hmm.
Very things that people may hold up and say that are good achievements, where they came from. You look like you've got something for me.
I do.
Okay.
So he's talking about the Mecca. He says, my only Mecca is, and shall always be Howard University. I've tried to explain this to you many times. This book is so personal. He is talking to his son. You say that you hear me, that you understand, but I'm not so sure that the force of my Mecca, the Mecca, can be translated into your new eclectic tongue. I am not even sure that it should be. My work is to give you what I know of my own particular path, while allowing you to walk your own. You can no more be Black like I am Black than I could be Black like your grandfather was. So that says, I'm giving you what I know. And I'm not expecting you to follow my path, but in order for you to improve on, you need to know my path.
Right.
And I think that is so important. A Jewish tradition is to never forget your history. And they go over the history every opportunity they can. And there isn't a Jewish child that did not, well, I'm going to say one who was religious, who does not know their history. And I think so often, African Americans especially, and I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I'd had an aunt live to be 101, and there was so much of her past that she just wouldn't talk about. And it was so, I think that past is important to talk about, to talk about how you grew up, because, kids can't always relate to, they know what they're experiencing, but they don't understand the path that you've taken to get to where you are. And that's important because you're giving them out of your journey and pouring into them out of your journey. And that's what the thing that I like is he said, I'm not asking you to do what I did. I'm not asking you to be as I have been. I need you to create your own Mecca. And there's so many little nuggets in here. There's so many.
I really thought I just thought it was so, it was beautiful. it really was beautiful and emotional and connective. There was parts of it that really resonated for me that as I said before, that I felt like I could touch. And then parts where I felt like just illuminated experiences that I can never have, and that I need that. I want that, I want to do better and learn and try, I only have one shot here on this planet. And so I need to know what I don't know and try to, do less of the bad things that I do and more of the good things that I do. And I do that without the help of other people. I can't just proof it out of my own brain, and I need these, the work of, artists and thinkers and friends and, enemies,
Yeah, right.
Really, right? Like, so to and I think this is, I heard this expression once that there's, that as you grow up, you come across sandpaper people, and that what the sandpaper, and that can be difficult sometimes. But what they do is they're kind of rubbing off the rough spots of you, and as you go and you go through life, that you have these experiences that doesn't feel comfortable. But if you recognize that there are these sandpaper people that are helping you become, shaped into what you need to be shaped into, and I think that all of those things for me are just incredible gifts, including, reading things. And I did not find that on a personal level, I did not find that when I read this book, I felt really uncomfortable. I certainly felt sad and also happy. Like the going back to Mecca, like that was so joyful and beautiful and something that, like, I think probably everybody reading wanted to be a part of, or could think of in their own lives those moments. So there's really, it was celebratory as well as being difficult and honest. And I just really appreciate it. And I realized, because it's 5 years old, I don't know how many people watching have not yet had an opportunity to read it, but I really have to say, it seems like one of those foundational works to me.
And let me just say, so it's 5 years old, and this I highlighted because he's talking about, I think this might have been in the part where he's talking about reclamation. And he says, I was beginning to learn to be wary of my own humanity, of my own hurt and anger. I didn't yet realize that the boot on your neck is just as likely to make you delusional as it is to ennoble. And I thought, here we go. I mean, this is 5 years ago. And there's no way he would have known what we saw, that the world saw on television. And but it's still, everything that we've experienced has felt like that.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably the only part, well, not the only part, but I think that was the part in the book that was just kind of like, it pulled me down just a little bit, because here it is, he's saying that the boot on your neck, and he's talking about a child. He's letting them know somebody's going to hold you down. We'll take you out. Yeah. So, yeah. Well, Kyla, it is 7:44 and we have not opened up. Can you believe that?
That's just what I was about to. It's like we're psychically linked. That was exactly what I was about to say. Go ahead.
So we need to open it up for questions.
Yes. Does anybody want to? I did see that our friend Susan Roberts has made a comment, and she. Let me just see if I can find it. Just acknowledging that. Oh yeah, such a gift to promote understanding. We have from one of the watchers, and lots of people commenting about, there we go, just how much it's resonated. I don't see any questions yet, though.
Yeah, I don't see it. Well, we can keep talking. I'm looking for.
Okay, so what people don't know, I'll just tell you all, that Michelle and I, before we do our little conversations, we often will talk on the phone, and we will be like, okay, I have 15 minutes. Okay, I have 15 minutes, so let's talk. And then like 2 hours later, like, okay, we did hang up the phone. So we can keep going for quite a while.
Thanks, Miss Vivian.
Thank you.
Just give us a really nice compliment.
So I want to go back to the dream. I have a quote that I'd like to share just while we're, in case, but it began to strike me. So this is on page 52. It began to strike me that the point of my education was a kind of discomfort. It was a process that would not award me my own especial dream. And so just to go back, this is what I was saying about how he talks about this fiction of a dream, and that there was a period where he was kind of like trying to find his way into the dream or get the dream. And then he realizes that this would not award me my own especial dream, but would break all the dreams, all the comforting myths of Africa, of America, and everywhere, and would leave me only with humanity in all of its terribleness. And there was so much terrible out there, even among us. You must understand this. But he goes on then to talk about that, how being free from that need for the dream, how to be free from that need for, so he's not a religious person. He talks about not being a religious person. So it's like, there's no dream. This is all we have. Instead of seeing that as like a negative, like a bad thing for him, it was this, and Michelle, you've touched on this complete liberation about how he was going to be in the world. He had this one life and he got to make it and be in it of his own choosing. And I thought that was just a powerful lesson. And I can imagine that for some people that would be really disheartening to feel like I can't hold on to a promise or a dream of the future. But for him, it seemed like it just opened his world, way up. How did you find that?
I agree. It's hard to believe. However, being an African American and seeing young men rise from their experiences that were not good and watching them become amazing men, I'm not shocked. And I don't know that any of them that I know that grew up in awful conditions or hard conditions saw it as trying to reach a dream. I read what my daughter's boyfriend wrote, and he said, that he was bounced from family to family. I don't know that he thought, I'm just trying to attain a dream. He was just trying to become the best man he could be based on the information that he had. And I think that the streets and a hard life and what you've been exposed to can either consume you or make you and swallow you up. And as Ta-Nehisi Coates would say, take your body, or it'll make you rise up and work harder so that you don't, so that your children don't have to go through that.
There's a saying that my Dan says a lot, and I'm going to get it wrong, and so I'm sorry for misquoting.
We're getting some questions too.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
I'll be really quick on that.
Well, this one is for you too. The first one's for you, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. So just this part about this idea that you can go through hardships, and some people, why is it that hardship for some people it compresses them, and they become hard, and for other people it breaks them open. And as you're talking, that's sort of what I think of as people who are through hardship but then are broken open into this other way of being, or able to fight beyond that.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, we have a question. So we have a question.
Nick wanted to know, it says, did any of the reads from last year in this series influence your reading of this book this year? And Kyla chose this book, so I just agreed to it.
Okay. I'm going to say, I'm sort of going to give a little bit of a non-answer in that I just, what I felt at the end of last year, so we had read, let's see if we can get them all. We had read What If I Say the Wrong Things? we had read What If? Stories to Spark Diversity Dialogue. We read How to Be an Anti-Racist. We read Blind Spot, Hidden Biases of Good People. We read White Fragility. And we read Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? And I think that's what we did last year, which is a lot. That's 7 according to my finger count. And what I felt at that time was that it's like when you throw sand at the edge of water, and maybe at first it kind of washes away, but when you do enough, it just starts to build on itself. You start to get this foundation, and they all start to work together. And so I think that reading it after this really in-depth study last year and conversation and thinking and growing, that this, I think, just added to that enhancement, as opposed to necessarily that anything we read influenced this. That I experienced it. I don't know. How about you, Michelle?
Well, like I said, I had read it, and honestly, I can't be any other way other than honest. It was like, yeah, I read it. I liked it. Okay. Well, Kyla wants to read it. But I think it fits in nicely. It fits in nicely. And this is so much lighter.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think he deals with hardships that are hard to read about. And especially feeling, because of how well it is written, you get to know him, and you don't want to know that he went through those kinds of hardships, and he doesn't dwell on it. So it leaves you with a sense of hope. I think this book will introduce people to the people who can rise above the hardships, like you mentioned. And it gives you this feeling of hope, and it makes you feel good about, taking bad experiences and making the best of those experiences. So Miss Elizabeth Towns asks, where do you think this work fits in the current climate of anti-racism, or does it? I think, and Kyla, please jump in here. I think that rarely do you hear him talk about white people are like this. He talks about our history. He talks about slavery. He talks about the African diaspora. He just goes over African American history, and then what's happening in the cities. And like I mentioned, he talks about people who were killed killed unjustly. But he doesn't say this is the fault of. He is. I think I read, and Kyla mentioned, he says people who believe themselves to be white. So it takes on a different tone. I think it will give people who are racist a better understanding of a different experience. And that, yes, and I hate to say this term, some people can pull themselves up by their bootstraps, and he had a way out, but not everybody. See, I'm saying it that way, but I also don't want people to. I want people to understand not everybody has bootstraps. So, not everybody even has shoes to pull up by. So, it didn't feel preachy to me. It didn't feel like he was banging it in your face. He was just, in my opinion, stating fact. Hey, and I just realized my friend Gina, I haven't seen or talked to her in a long time. She's here, and she moved to Arkansas. So all the way from Arkansas.
So, and I think to that point, to go back to how does it fit in with the conversation, I do think for me, and I said this at the beginning, but I'll repeat it, which is that I think to build understanding and to offer an experience that, someone like me, I am never going to have, and be able to read and just, I want to say to understand, but I mean, I recognize I can never understand, but I can start to touch something. And so giving that opportunity, and I think this is one of the wonderful things about art, it's one of the wonderful things about books and poetry and memoir and fiction and movies, that it is a way for us to have emotional resonance with a story that's not our own. And so I think, to answer the question, for me, I think it really does fit in, and I, encourage anybody who's interested to read it for sure.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions?
So Miss Asia Morgan says, I think reading it made me feel like I had got hold of my breath the entire time. Perhaps it's due to the long chapters. Is that on purpose?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't experience the feeling of holding my breath. I actually had the feeling of what's next. And maybe that's the same feeling, Ms. Morgan. It's, what's next? What is what's coming? Because like I said, I read it when it first came out. So a lot of it I didn't remember. So yeah, but I can see what you're saying. That there's this feeling of holding your breath. But you know what? It may have been for him, it might have been on purpose, because growing up with extreme hardships is very much like holding your breath.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is this a book that a Black 10-year-old can read, or should I read it to him? I don't know that. It depends on how mature your 10-year-old. There is some
like
cursing
14.
and
Yeah.
profanity. He deals with some other tough topics. So I'm not sure a 10-year-old is quite ready for this book. I would say, if anything, maybe a middle schooler. And that's still a mature middle school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, are we getting to be that time, guys?
We have 3 more minutes.
Okay. Well, I think that I'm gonna wrap us up here. So first of all, Michelle,
This is fun.
I don't think we should go 4 months without talking again. So it's been so good to see you again. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm just so grateful for people tuning in, and we see some familiar faces. I know we've got our Hawaii viewers, and we said Arkansas.
Yeah. Someone said that they've been watching us from the beginning, Kyla.
Oh, see, so I just love that. So, thank you so much, everybody, for just being supportive and tuning in and being on this journey with us.
Yeah. And we have Miss Vivian. Miss Vivian, I think, watches every show that we produce.
Miss Vivian is the library.
All of PGC. Yes, right. She is Miss Library.
She's the library super fan. Yeah. She's fantastic.
So we appreciate it, because I was so afraid that nobody was going to show up tonight. You take a break and then you wonder, is anybody willing to talk about a book tonight? So thank you all for tuning in. This has been good. We took a 4-month break.
4-month break. And I'm gonna give a little highlight, if I can, about some things we have coming up. So this diversity dialogue continues on the last Tuesday of every month, with a little break in May. But I'm gonna run through really quick what we have coming up. Try and do it in my speedy fast voice. In March, last Tuesday of March, we are doing I Am Woman by Lee Miracle, who's a great Canadian First Nations author. And this book came out it's a feminist study, Indigenous feminist study, and it should be awesome. And that's in March. And then in April, we're doing The Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson. Taking a break in May. In June, we're doing Pass with Care, which is a collection of essays, memoirs. In July, Killers of the Flower Moon by David Grantu. In August, we're doing Coming of Age in Mississippi. September, In the Dream House by Carmen Machado. And in October, we're doing Middlesex. So that's what's coming up in this series, and we hope you can come back. And also, in your immediate future, we are having Joanne James to talk about her essay collection, Table Scraps, next Monday, March 1st. And that'll be me talking to Joanne James, and I hope you can join us. That'll be 7:00 on your favorite library YouTube channel. And on March 8th, we're having Michael Twitty, the library, and our agency, the Human Relations Commission, are joining together to bring Michael Twitty, who, for those of you who are local or interested in food, he is the author of The Cooking Gene. He's a culinary historian, and he has a new cookbook coming out called Rice. So that's on March 8th. But you can learn about those and all the other awesome things that the library is doing by going to pgcmls.info/events. And even though I do not work for the library, I will tell you, you can get a library card from our favorite library system. Even if you don't live here, they will get you a virtual library card because they're awesome. And I highly recommend that you do that. So, all right. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Michelle. And thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. And thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next time.